Hello there, welcome to or welcome back to my channel, Snips by Kelly. I'm Kelly and I'm excited that you're here tonight. I have a single page layout that is a companion page idea to add to a single page layout that I created last week with the Otterly Adorable Collection. Now this collection drops on our shop site tomorrow as an online exclusive, and for this single page layout I created this fun river running through it. There's some specialty dies in the Otterly Amazing set that create these little slits in the paper so these cute little otters can sit in those slits and look like they are swimming and bouncing up and down in the water. So these are some more photos that coordinate with the photo that I used on the single page. These are all of my son and daughter-in-law, my son Zachary, youngest son Zachary, and my daughter-in-law before they were married. This is quite a few years ago, and I'm thinking really the only way that I can accommodate this second page is to continue the river. If I continue the river through to the next page and just have it run through the upper left side of the page, I'll be left with 3/4 of the page to be able to add more photo opportunities to add to the single photo on the left hand side. So the kids were at the dam, the Oahe Dam. And so you can see a little bit of the dam in the background. You can see some big stones or river rocks. And so I have 4 photos here. I'm not sure if I'm going to use 3 photos or 4 photos. I'm not sure if I'm going to stack them on top of each other or make a triangle, but I do know that I like the concept of continuing the river to the upper left. So I'm just going to mark about where I think that river would continue if it was going to continue across the other page. And then I'm going to tear that just like I did the left page. Now you can see the entire process video for the left page. I'll link it here and in the description. You just click more on the video and it will be down below. And you can see all of the parts and pieces that we used in that first layout and a full process video from start to finish. We're going to create the second river on the companion page to tie the 2 pages together. Usually if you just carry over a little bit even of the theme that you started on the left page, you can coordinate a simple companion page. So I'm going to tear on those pencil lines and tear a little bit off the top and then tear a little bit more. Now on the left page, we tore a little more than 2 inches through the middle and got narrower as we went to the upper right of the river. Here we're going to stay a little bit more narrow. I don't want to take up too much of the right page because I want to be able to add 3 or 4 photos on the right page. So I've made my photos 3 by 3 and I've put an 1/8 inch photo mat in willow white on the back. So 3 1/8 by 3 1/8. Now I think I'm happy with that. On the left page, I used Azure Afternoon. I kept calling it Azure blue, but it's Azure Afternoon ink on the edges, and it was a little darker than the blues that came in the collection, but I liked that it made it pop a little bit on the edges of the river. So I'm just using a little blending brush and blending a little bit of the Azure Afternoon ink onto the edges. And actually, I rub a little bit more than just the edges. I like that little hue just rubbing a little bit deeper than just the edge of that. Now I have a 10 1/4 by 10 1/4 early espresso cardstock, and I'm going to add that to my frame. Now, if you watched the first video, I created the frame by cutting 1 inches all the way around. So I cut from 1 inches to 11 inches all the way around so that I could conserve that inner part to use on other projects. So I'm going to add the early espresso 10 1/4 by 10 1/4, and then I created the dot frame overlay on the Cricut, same as I did on the left page. And so that's really going to be the bulk of the base. And I'm actually going to be adding foam tape to the two frame pieces. I'm using thin foam tape strips. You can add dimensionals or larger foam tape strips, however you would like to do it. But I'm just making sure to get the edges and the center. And then I'm going to add a piece of the blue wave paper, the same blue wave paper that I used on the left page, onto the upper right. So we don't need to use a whole sheet. We can just take the leftover blue wave paper that we had left over from the left page and create enough in that corner just so that the river can peek through those pieces. Now I'm not going to adhere the river down just yet because my vision is to add one more otter to the river and to add some more fish and maybe a log. I like how sometimes there's a log laying in the river and there might be little animals playing around the log, and I thought that might be a really good way to tie the two pages together. I love how the left page came out with the specialty die from the Otterly Amazing set to create the slits in that background. So here's what we have left over, and I'm just eyeballing because not everyone is going to tear in exactly the same spot. So I'm eyeballing and I'm going to trim that piece off. And then I'm going to actually trim even more of that off because there's some otters on the back side of this wave paper that actually you can die cut out with dies that come right in the Otterly Amazing die set. And so I don't want to waste even that little triangle. So I'm guesstimating about where the white is torn, and I'll trim off the bottom so that I have, even if it's a few otters, and I can save a little bit of paper and only use the amount of paper that I'm going to need. So you can see that there's some otters on the back side that I will either be able to use the wave paper or I'll be able to dye some more otters out. So I'm not going to put this down just yet. I just want to see if it's going to fit, and I'm going to leave a little edge around the espresso, and I'm creating this almost identically to how I created the river on the left page. Now I'm going to eventually put this top corner back up, and I'm liking the way that that's going to look. I really like carrying the theme of the left page over to the right page. Sometimes you only need to carry over just a few elements. I have a few scraps of vellum left because if you watched the first video, I took vellum strips and I ran them across the wave paper to give it a little bit more of texture and then a little bit more of a water vibe so that some of the otters' tails and bits and pieces of the otters and the fish were under the vellum and some were over the vellum to make them look like they're sort of floating and bobbing in and out of the water. Now we don't have a die that cuts this particular otter out, but I really thought he was cute and he would be one of the only otters that I haven't used yet in the water. And I like how his tail is sort of flipping up, and I love the little expression on his face. So I thought I could fussy cut him out and make it so his tail is sticking all the way out of the water and his body is floating in the water. And that's a pretty narrow river that we're going to have on the right page. And he'll fit perfectly if part of him is in the water and part of him is out of the water. So anytime I fussy cut, I always like to leave a little bit of an edge. So maybe about an 1/8 inch of that. It helps you to not have to fussy cut just perfectly, and it also helps to make it look like it's a die or it's a die cut, because most die cuts have a little bit of an edge, typically a white edge, but sometimes a different color. So I'm going to cut him all the way around, leaving just a little bit of the blue around him. And I think he's going to be so cute. He's super playful, and he isn't identical to any of the otters that I used on the left page. So we can bring in a couple different otters to change up the elements on the right page. So on the left page, I use the circles from the Spotlight on Nature dies. And again, that's all linked in the description, and it is I go over the parts and pieces in great detail on the left page. So you can watch that video that's linked in the description. So here is that little specialty die that creates slits in the paper so that you can tuck the otters actually in the paper and put parts of them in and parts of them out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the blue wave paper back out from underneath. I'm going to mark with a pencil about where I think that die should cut, and then I'm going to take it over to the die cutter and cut it. So I actually had a little bit of sticky on that top piece, so I had to pull that off so that I can figure out where I want this piece to be. So I could actually have him up a little higher. I do end up moving him a little lower. There's kind of a natural little notch where I tore the paper, where I think he's going to fit perfect, and then his tail can be out of the water and his body can be in the water. So I'm going to mark that on the wave paper, pull that wave paper off, run that over to the die cutter, and cut that out. Now I did have to put it the skinny way, and then I also made sure that the die wasn't all the way off on the right side so it didn't cut the paper in two pieces. I just had it so that it was going off toward the left of the page. Now you can see the otter's going to fit in there great. I'm going to take these scraps of vellum and add 2 or 3 scraps. I think I add 3 scraps and one of them I get a little thick and I do a little bit of tearing on that. I'm going to put liquid adhesive from my fine tip glue pen on one side, and then I'm going to just lay the flaps over on the edges, and then I'll add fine tip glue pin on the edges, and then I'll come in with my scissors and trim off the excess vellum. So right now I'm just trying to make sure that I like the way that it looks, and then I actually end up making some of it a little more bumpy. Once I have adhered it down with the liquid glue, I have a little bit of give because it's a little loose in the middle, and I can poke something underneath that to make it bend a little bit so that it's actually giving me a little bit more texture so it looks like waves. And then I'll add a log in there, and I'll actually make a little bump in the log also to add some more dimension, and it makes it look a little more realistic if the log is a little bent and the waves are kind of coming up and down. It's a little awkward when you're adding odd pieces, but it always seems to work out. If you just add your liquid glue on there and make it a little bit random. I'm kind of trying to get one vellum piece to go over the slits so that there's not like a little slit showing in between. Even though the otter's going to be in the top part of the slit, there's a bottom part as well. And so I'm strategically placing the vellum. And this is very similar or almost identical to how I did it on the left page, just repeating that performance. So when I get ready to make a companion page, often I like a more decorative page on the left and a more functional page on the right. But because this is such cute specialty paper, I'm adding a few more decorative elements to this. I still am going to add at least 3 more photos. You could also add 3x3 flip flaps to each of the photos and actually get 6 photos on the right page and 1 photo on the left page super easily. So flip flaps are a signature item that we used to have in Close to My Heart that allow pockets, and you can add photos to those pockets and either put those pockets over the original photos on the page protector, or you can create slits in your page protector. And actually, in addition to 3 additional photo opportunities, you could actually get 6 more. So you could actually fit 9 photos or 10 photos on the right, even 12 photos on the right, if you put a photo on the top of the flip flap and a photo on the bottom of the flip flap or the inside, and then you would have your original photo. So I can give you a hint. I actually end up only using 3 photos on the right. So if you added flip flaps to each of the photos, you could add 6 more for a total of 9 photos. So I didn't choose to do that with this one. This was a day. So Zachary and MJ actually missed our family photos. Zachary was there, but MJ had to work. And this was, I believe it's been over 10 years ago already. And I scrapped most of these family photos, or some of these family photos, but I never did get these photos of Zachary and MJ scrapped. MJ had to work on the day of our family photos, and she is a vet tech, and of course it's unpredictable, so she ended up running way late and missed our family photos. So we kind of set up a little photo opportunity for them to go and do some things, just the 2 of them after, so I could add those to the photos. So they sort of wore the colors that we wore in our family photos, and all of the family photos were done at their ranch, and then they went to the dam, and they love the dam, so it was kind of appropriate anyway. And I don't believe at this point 10 years ago they had had any couple photos taken, so it was a real cute opportunity for us to get their photos. So now I'm just adding a few little bits to the river, and my idea, if I could make it work out, was to have a log in the river and have a few stones on either side of the log, and have some fish maybe kind of under and over the log. And then of course the fun, cute little otter who's just enjoying his day. You can see his little tummy and his little smile and his little whiskers, and his little tail is sticking out. So I will add a little foam dimensional to his head and to his tail, so that it sticks up, but yet it's secured down. And so I kind of want it so his body is down lower, and it's adhered directly inside the little slot. And then the head and the tail are popped up with foam tape a little bit. So I'm going to add some of the fish under the vellum and some of the fish over the vellum, and some of them on the wave paper. Now these little bits and pieces are bits and pieces that I have left over from creating the left page. I can create more because the river weeds and the river greenery is all from the Otterly Amazing die set, and the stones are from the die set, so are the fish. I did use a few little circles from the Spotlight on Nature, and by the end of this video I add a few more for some fillers and to add some landing places for a few of my fussy cut pieces. So I see myself adding some greenery around a couple different areas, and I'm not quite sure at this point in the video exactly how I'm going to arrange the photos, so I don't know what other focal elements I'm going to need, but I kind of vision maybe making a few tags out of some of the pattern paper, adding a few more of the Spotlight on Nature dies. Those Spotlight on Nature dies are such a great investment set. They have decorative edges on all of the circles and all different kinds of circles and sizes, and you can use them separately or stack them on top of each other. So originally I think maybe I will put all 4 of them on top of each other and toggle them. Maybe I'll put 2 to the left and 2 to the right. Maybe I'll put them on a diagonal up the center. It's really kind of hard to decide. I think anything works. I really like all of these. I think all of these would have possibilities. So if you had the block of 4, you could maybe put some journaling or some decorative elements to the left and to the top. If you have them toggled over to the left on the bottom and the right on the top, that would leave you a little pocket there on the right to put some decorative elements. So there's just so many ways to arrange these photos. So I decide that no matter what way I arrange the photos, I'm going to need some fillers. So I pull some of the colors. One is the pretty peacock, and then some white, and then I pull the gray pattern paper and the fish pattern paper, and then the other, let's see, the other color, goodness, that's escaping me. I believe it is, I have it right here, Lost Lagoon. So I make the Lost Lagoon tag by cutting 2 by 3 inch rectangles, cutting a corner off, flipping that corner over to the left side, and using it as a pattern to cut the left side off so that the tag is equal. Then I use those tags as the pattern for the last 2 tags. And so I'm going to use those as fillers in some way, shape, or form, and go ahead and add those as additional decorative elements. So I kind of think that I like the idea of the photos flowing along with the river. So maybe on a diagonal, and then maybe adding the tags in a decorative way on the lower right. Like maybe have one of them up, one of them down, one of them kind of in the middle. And then with the photos, I can see maybe the bottom left and the upper right flush, and then popping up the middle one for a little added interest. And then maybe adding another cute little otter, the cute little otter that we haven't used yet. Fussy cut him out of some of the pattern paper. Add him with a Spotlight on Nature die, and then some greenery, and add some river flora and fauna, as I called it in the last video, for lack of anything better to call it. So I think that's going to help be a great filler. It's going to tie the left and the right page together with the color scheme. I had a couple little circles left from the Spotlight on Nature. I have a little white one and then a little Lost Lagoon one, and I'm liking that. The only thing I'm not quite sure about is the space underneath the upper right photo. It seems like a lot of white space, and that seems like maybe a really good spot to do some journaling. I don't have a lot to say about the photos, so I don't need a lot of journaling, but right now I'm going to rub very lightly with the Azure Afternoon Blue, and then I actually am just showing you here the Spotlight on Nature dies. They're so great. There's 2 full sets of them, and they're all different sizes and all different edges, and I have used and used and used them. They're great journaling circles. They're great landing spots. They're excellent fillers. You can cut them in half. You can layer them on top of each other, and they're just really great to have. So I'm just going to add a little doodling on the edges of the tags with my black Le Pen. It's just a very easy way to elevate a small piece. And if you like the look, you can do it. And if you don't like the look, you don't have to do it. But it's just a little quick and easy way to add interest to the tags and make them look a little less plain. You could also use a white gel pen. I felt like the black Le Pen went a little bit better. So I'm going to put those in different heights, and then I'll actually trim off the bottom, and then I'll come over the top with the Spotlight on Nature circle, and then I'll add some decorative elements to that, and that really ties in yet another cluster that draws your eye across from the upper left of the left page all the way across those photos down to the lower right, so that your eye goes across the other 3 photos. And it's a nice way, either a visual triangle or any way to get your eye to draw across. And it can go from the upper left down to the little log cluster, and then it can go back up to the river, or it can go down to those tags and then draw attention to those photos. So now I'm adding foam tape to the middle one, toggling the middle photo in between the 2 corner photos, to add a little dimension and interest. I do love so far the way the log is looking in the river and the cute little otter and the fish in the river. I definitely do think we're going to need to add the greenery. And then I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did add second generation crumb cake stamping with the Art of Texture stamp. Now, it's my understanding that that is completely sold out right now in the US market, the Art of Texture stamp, but we've had so many blotch stamps in the past, whether it be from Stampin' Up! Or Close to My Heart. So any one of the splotch or blotch stamps would work great just to add. I just felt like it looked kind of like the otter tail was slapping around and it had a little bit of water and dirt on it and it splattered around, and I thought that was a real cute look that actually went with the otters. So now I'm going to add some greenery. I'm adding that cute little otter that I fussy cut right out of the pattern paper. And I think I'll add some greenery around the tags. I'll add some greenery around the rocks or stones up around the river. And then let's see what we can do with that little blank valley in there that needs a little something something. It's coming together, and I really like how the river tied the two pages together, and yet having that river flow all the way up. I could have had it come down in a V, but having it come all the way up gave me 3/4 of the page to work with so that I wasn't only left with a little spot to be able to decorate and add photos to. So I'm just randomly adding whatever I happen to have left. You can see that some of them I actually even trimmed off and used on the left page, so they're not even whole pieces of the greenery, but they're going to work just fine. I'm just going to pick a couple different colors to put on the upper left. And then I fuss with those a little bit. It just seems like it always takes a little minute to figure out where you want all those to be. I'm coming back in with second generation crumb cake, meaning that I've stamped off on scrap paper and I'm stamping back on, and I just want it to barely show up, just like some little otter splatters. I just want there to be a little bit of a distressed background in there to look a little bit gray-brown, just like a little muddy otter's footprints. I'm going to add right now a couple of the stones that are the irregular riverside stones or gems, but I'm not done. I usually do the bling at the end, but I think what I'm doing here is I'm adding the bling and thinking about that blank spot. I don't have a lot to say about the photos, just that it was a great day for them. And it was part of our family photos, and then maybe the date. But there's maybe a few decorative things that I could do with some circles in there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and add some Spotlight on Nature circles, and maybe I will add a little bit of that blue that I used in the upper left of the left page with the school of fish cut out of them. I think it would be really good to use that blue, which is Pool Party. I believe it's Pool Party, yes, and add that so that there's a little bit of that blue over on the right, and so there's a little bit of color balance. So we have that same blue in the river, we have that same blue in the upper left with the school of fish, and then we have it added with those Spotlight on Nature circles, and that makes me so much happier to fill in that blank spot, do a little bit of journaling. So I cut 2 of the Spotlight on Nature circles in half to end up with 4 colored circles. And then added the journaling on a white Spotlight on Nature. So very simple companion page, but it does the trick. I love the river running through the whole thing, the playful otters and the logs, and I hope it makes you feel happy that we've completed that layout and made it into a full 2-page spread. Thanks for watching. Shoot me a comment, hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.